Welcome back to Recovering from Everything, a podcast for everyone who has ever had anything happen to them ever. Just because we're on video now doesn't mean that I'm going to change anything about my outfits or my recording style. This is how I would have recorded every other audio podcast. So in true Kinga fashion and honoring my authenticity, I will not be changing a damn thing. So we're going to talk about shame today. A friend of mine messaged me yesterday, and she has been on a sort of like therapy journey and kind of keeping me posted about it. She had started EMDR, or was planning on starting EMDR, and she and her therapist were talking about it yesterday, and the topic of alcohol came up and how she had used alcohol to cope with her very toxic relationships for like about a decade, if not longer. And she was saying how coping with alcohol brought her so much shame. And I was so intrigued by this because I think this way of thinking is really common for a lot of women, where shame from alcohol is kind of the byproduct and it's seen as sort of like the end result. I drink so much and therefore I have shame and embarrassment. But no one's really talking about the role that shame plays in picking up that first drink. So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit, because that's a huge driver for women to drink. And I want to talk about kind of like how that plays out and sort of the cycle of it. It's a huge part of the sort of like first phase of my program for women. If you want to start unpacking your own stuff, you are welcome to join us in the program. Just shoot me a DM or get at me somehow. There's like a million ways to contact me. So do that. What I would like to focus on is the role that shame plays in picking up our first drink. So I'm just thinking, because I want to be very like considerate of how I phrase this, but when we are younger, there is certain programming that we are subjected to that convinces us we are bad in some way. So, not good enough, out of control, a fuck up, destined for shittiness. Whatever your programming is, if it falls under one of those umbrellas, you've been programmed to feel ashamed of yourself. And shame is certainly an umbrella term, and it comes with a lot of unpleasant feelings. And part of those unpleasant feelings is embarrassment, is the urge to hide stuff about yourself, anger, sadness, deep sadness. Experiencing shame for long enough is so uncomfortable that we are inevitably going to look for a way to reduce those intense feelings. If you're a teenager, everyone around you is already drinking. We're drinking in parks. So it's incredibly easy to cope with those terrible feelings about ourselves using alcohol. And I know for me, there was that one episode where I read my parts of my diary from when I was 14. It's very easy to think that alcohol is going to make things more fun, and it's going to make you more fun and funnier and make things more acceptable and make you more acceptable. And for a long time, it does. And this translates into adulthood where my stressful day becomes more acceptable if I can have a drink at the end of it. My evening becomes more exciting, more bearable if I can have a drink throughout it. My experience living in my own skin is more acceptable if I have a drink in my hand and I'm sort of like diluting myself and bringing in a fog and bringing in a sort of like loopy buzz, right? So all of that is driven by a sense of shame. I'm not good enough. I can't manage my feelings. I'm fucking up at work. I'm fucking up as a wife. I'm fucking up as a parent. I'm fucking up as a grandparent for some women. And we get stuck in this habit of turning to alcohol to reduce that. What happens is, and this is the most common sort of byproduct, and this is kind of like the jump off point for a lot of women, is what happens then is we end up feeling worse about ourselves. Physically, in the morning, we feel like shit, but because we've been under the influence the night before, if we can remember what we did, we get really freaking embarrassed, right? So it could be, who did I text? Who did I call? What did I cry about? Who did I start a fight with? Um, what moments did I miss with my kids, with my partner? All of the behaviors that come from us drinking the night before cause us more shame. And it ends up being this sort of like cycle of validation where you always end up kind of subconsciously thinking, see, I knew it. I knew I was a fuck up. I know I'm not good enough. You just end up validating the shameful reasons of your shame that drove you to pick up that drink in the first place. And honestly, there's a lot of comfort in being right, in saying, even through the discomfort of, I knew I was a fuck up. I knew I'm not good enough. I knew it. There's a comfort in that because it's predictable. There is a safety in predictability. And if I can always predict my own outcome, I feel safe. The discomfort and the self-loathing and the shame and the guilt aside, I know who I am and what I'm like and what I do, and there's comfort in that. And so doing anything outside of that or stepping into a space where I don't know who I am and I don't know what I'm going to do next is scary. It's super scary. And if we have enough shame, we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that we can do well or go for a long enough stretch where we're not fucking up in some way. We don't believe that. Even now in my current life, and I do a ton of work, and I do work on myself every day. I do intensive journaling, I do meditation, I do manifestations. I like I work, I am vigilant. Um, Even if things have been going too smoothly for too long, this fear kind of takes over and is like, when is the bottom gonna drop? When's that cookie gonna crumble? Like, when am I gonna fuck this up? When is the good thing gonna go away? So and I tell you that because I work on myself vigilantly, and I am just about to close in on 12 years of sobriety, but also like intense recovery. And so for the average person, the regular person that's like just starting her journey, these feelings would be so overwhelming, and it would be really, really hard to shift your behavior long enough for you to even see consistent, positive, easy changes. And this is why I'm like, if women are making a change to their alcohol use, do not do it alone. You don't know what the fuck you're doing, but you also don't have like the trained eye or even the trained vocabulary to talk to yourself in a positive way about the changes that you have made. Your default is going to be, I'm not good enough. I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to lose this all somehow. So don't do it alone. But there is a tremendous, it's not like a chicken egg situation when it starts. It's very much like you were programmed to think about yourself a certain way, most likely by people who had the exact same programming and didn't know how to program you differently. So you're just basically receiving a way to think about yourself from people who are also incredibly shameful, and there's a healthy coding of self-loathing and self-doubt, and a lack of self-confidence and whatever, and you just don't have the vocabulary, and so that's passed on to you, and so you don't have the vocabulary and you don't know how to kind of skirt around these sort of shameful thoughts about yourself, until you ask for help and you commit to someone like me, or consistent therapy, or some sort of leader or mentor or guide or coach or whatever to kind of handcuff themselves to you and be like, no, 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 it's this way, keep going this way. Yes, I see that over there, and I hear that you are embarrassed and ashamed and negative self-talk, yeah, blah 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 blah. We're going this way, like we got to keep going, so let's keep it moving here. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to dissect a little bit that there is decades of programming that need to be deprogrammed. Usually by the time you're aware of it, it's been decades of the same types of thoughts about yourself running through your brain. And of course, after a while, you're going to seek a release from that. And we do it with alcohol, we do it with drugs, we do it with other people, right? A need for constant validation and show me you love me, show me you love me. Oh, you're showing me you love me, but I don't fucking believe you, because if you knew me, you wouldn't really love me, right? And acting out and being like, I knew it, I knew you didn't really love me, because someone is like, hey, you can't keep acting like that. That's a whole other podcast. But we seek these external ways to kind of quiet our inner shame, and it doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. Sorry, dudes. It doesn't work. We need to do some of that inner work, and it is incredibly difficult, and very much like the blind leading the blind if you're trying to do this on your own. So I definitely encourage you to seek outside help with that. Um, but yeah, the shame that you are using to cope with, that you were using alcohol to cope with things, that shame is actually like old news, and you're using alcohol to cope with whatever in your life, but it's shame that you're already carrying, that's extending your hand to reach for that drink. And everything that happens while you're drinking and after you're drinking is a way for you to subconsciously reinforce that, yeah, you suck. You're no good. I knew it, right? You wake up with yet another hangover. Like, I knew it. I knew I was going to fuck this up. Why am I like this? I'm always going to be like this. I knew it. So I hope that makes sense, and it is a little bit helpful for someone somewhere. Um, there's a ton of reprogramming that needs to be done, but we first have to look at how you are programmed. And a huge chunk of my program, the whole like first little bit, is looking at your programming, like down to the nitty fucking gritty, girl. And it gets ugly and people get uncomfortable, and I'm like, we need to figure out how you're programmed, so we know exactly what you're walking away from and what steps to take. So sure, you might feel bad for using alcohol as a coping skill, but there's a fuck ton of stuff that comes before the alcohol, that's for sure. The alcohol is just like the quickest, easiest way to rid yourself of those unpleasant feelings for a few hours. That's it. Great job. You're very efficient, that's for sure. So again, if you want some assistance with that, please feel free to reach out. You can contact me in 100 different ways. Okay, I have gone on long enough. I hope that this was helpful. Women, shame, alcohol, it's all related, but probably not in the way that you think. So I hope that this provided some clarity for you. And thanks for listening to another episode of Recovering from Everything, a podcast for everyone who has ever had anything happen to them ever, including being programmed to feel like shit at an early age and carrying that shit well into our midlife. I'll see you soon. Hopefully.